Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'ina lahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin wa alayna ma'ahum wa fihim bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. We intend learning and teaching, remembering and reminding, giving and receiving benefit and gain, encouraging adherence to Allah's book and the sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, inviting to guidance and leading to goodness, seeking therein Allah's countenance, pleasure, nearness and reward, transcendent and exalted is He. We intend what the author, our sheikhs and the pious have intended and what Allah knows of virtuous intentions, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept. So continuing this lesson in this blessed text, Matn Abi Shuja', we finished last week tayammum. And we discussed doing tayammum with a splint. Doing tayammum while wearing a splint. And by that we mean a covering on one of the parts that is obligatory to wash. So that may be in wudu. So it'd be the face, arms, head, which is somewhat unlikely, or feet. And it might be in ghusl anywhere on one's body. So we mentioned that someone who is doing tayammum because of a covering has to do three things. What are those three things? Someone is going to do purification with a covering, either wudu or ghusl. They have to do three things. What are those three things?
They have to wash everything off.
Right? Right? They have to wash everything they can that's not injured. And they have to make tayammum, and they have to wipe over the covering. Right? They have to wash what they can, wipe over the covering, and do tayammum. And in the case that they're doing wudu, when do they make tayammum in the case of wudu? They're doing tayammum because they have a covering on one of the areas that's obligatory to wash in wudu. At what point do they do tayammum? Go ahead. Yes? The point that you're going to wash what? Right. So the place, the part of your body that has the injury, at the time of washing that part, you also do tayammum because you're doing it on account of that part. And it's better to do the tayammum first than the washing, if it's on the hands and face, because then, or the face and hands, because then the water will remove the dust. That is correct. La ilaha illallah. Okay. Did anybody memorize all 5 scenarios of the covering? Can anyone bring all 5? You got it? Yeah. Okay. 5 scenarios of tayammum with a covering. Okay, what are they?
Covering the tayammum area.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? The 5 scenarios when you're doing tayammum with a covering. Okay, what are they? Mashi. Uh-huh. So that needs review. That needs review, inshallah. Everybody should review that from their notes. And for brevity, I'm not going to go over all of them again. But that needs review. 5 scenarios. Tayyib. So for tayammum, that's tayammum. And then we're going to begin the next section, which is in your translation, types of filth. The author said, فَصْلٌ وَكُلُّ مَاعٍ خَرَجَ مِنَ السَّبِيلَيْنِ نَجِسٌ إِلَّا الْمَنِيءُ وغسل جميع الأبوال والأرواث واجب إلا بول الصبي الذي لم يأكل الطعام فإنه يطهر برش الماء عليه. So he says, the translation of this is, all liquids that exit from the genitals are filth, which will be defined except for sexual fluid, mani. Washing all urine and excrement is obligatory except for urine from a male infant who has not eaten food, which may be purified by sprinkling the affected area with water. So this is 1.9, talking about types of filth. So you might remember that when we began this section, we said there are 4 objectives of purification, or 4 things that we do in our purification. Wudu, ghusl, tayammum, and removal of filth. So we've covered the first 3, and now we're covering the last. And the reason why this is important is that when you pray, you have to have a ritual purity, meaning that you've performed wudu or ghusl when you need to, or in the case where you can't do either of those, you do tayammum. So for that reason, we needed to know those 3 that we just covered, wudu, ghusl, and tayammum, for ritual purity. And then there's physical purity that you also have to have for the validity of your prayer. And what that means is that your body, your clothing, and that will be discussed when we cover prayer, and the thing upon which you're praying have to be pure from filth. So that necessitates for us an understanding of what is considered filth in this context, and also an understanding of how to remove it. So that's what he's going to do now. And that's necessary because we need to know how to do this in order to be pure physically for the prayer. So he said types of filth. Okay, first of all, what is filth? What do we mean by filth? Do we mean dirt? Not necessarily, because you make tayammum with dirt. So obviously, that's not considered filth. Do we mean like leftover food? No. What we mean is anything that is any type of dirt or any type of filth which prevents the validity of prayer when there's no dispensation. Any type of filth that prevents the validity of prayer when there's no dispensation. So a filth that prevents the validity of a prayer, an example is what he mentioned, like urine, as opposed to the example we mentioned, like just dirt, just clean dirt from your garden. You come in out of gardening, or oil from your mechanic. That doesn't prevent the validity of prayer. It's filthy, but doesn't prevent the validity of prayer. So what we mean here is filth that prevents the validity of prayer. And then he said when there's no dispensation, some types of filth, they prevent, some types of filth, if there's a dispensation, they don't prevent the validity of prayer. So like blood is a type of filth, but sometimes it's excused, and then in that case, prayer is still valid. So a filth here, we mean every filth that prevents the validity of prayer unless there's an excuse or a dispensation. Tayyib. So he's going to go through a list of that. First, we're going to deal with how to purify yourself from that. So he said, all liquids that exit from the genitals are filth except for sexual fluid mani. So what that means is that the excretions, by that we mean the urine or the excrement of any animals, or living creatures, humans or animals, that is impure. And anything that exits is filth that has to be removed for prayer to be valid. One exception is what he's translating here as sexual fluid mani. And that's filth but it's not a filth that prevents the validity of prayer. The proof of that is what Bukhari and Muslim relate. Was it Bukhari and Muslim? Excuse me, what Muslim relates, that Aisha related that she would scrape the mani off the clothing of Allah's Messenger, and then he would pray. And if it had been filth, then merely scraping it wouldn't be enough, because as we will see, filth has to be removed by washing, and in that case he didn't wash. So that's a proof for its purity, as the Shafi'i Imams understood it. Some of the Imams understood it as being impure when moist, but when dried, it could just be purified by scraping. That's their understanding. In any case, it's preferable still to wash it with water, avoiding the difference of opinion, and also because it's unclean. It's gross, and you don't want that on your clothing. And also that reminds us about something about ourselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in many verses of the Quran, He reminds us to look to the origin from which we were created. And really, initially, we were just created from human excretions that would be seeming kind of repulsive. And in this context, they mention this discussion when they talk about another kind of filth, and that's the filth that we might have in our heart, like arrogance. And that we should remember what we began as, and also what we'll become. And someone who their beginning is just excretions, or their beginning is that they were dirt. At one point we were just earth. Allah created us from earth. And then before that we were even less than earth, and we were nothing.